Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how to set up OSPF. So let's start with putting a router ID on our 3550. So to do that, we need to go into router OSPF1. Oh look, we're getting an error message here. IP routing not enabled. So what that tells us is we've never entered the command IP routing. Now let's try that again. Router OSPF1. As you can see now, it lets us. So if you ever do see that, it means you haven't actually turned on routing for your layer 3 switch. So now that we're in router OSPF1, we want to assign a router ID. Now you always want to just hit tab and let yourself get auto completed here, let your commands auto complete. That way you don't ever really make any typing mistakes. You always make sure you're in the right mode. It's just good practice to hit tab. It's something I always do. So for our router ID, now in a production network, you're normally going to give this an actual IP address. I know in a lot of the training videos they'll give it 1.1.1.1. Okay, but to prepare you for the real world, I'm gonna show you how it's really done out in the field. So you would give this a public address normally, right? I personally don't own any IP space. So let's just go ahead and use a private address. So I'm going to give it 192.168.0.25. Okay? And then now we have a router ID set up. Okay, let me show you where in the running config you would find this stuff that we're building here. Control Z is going to pop me back to enable mode here. Show run space pipe include, actually let's do begin. This is what I always use, is just router. This is going to take me to the router OSPF section. As you can see, we have router OSPF1, router ID 192.168.0.25, log adjacency changes. Okay, so basically we've turned on OSPF. Now, in a lot of the training videos, they'll show you how to do a network statement to start advertising, sending out your hellos, trying to find other routers running OSPF so you can form adjacencies. I'm going to show you something just a little bit different here. So the only thing that's really plugged in to this router right now, or switch, whatever, I'm gonna call this layer 3 switch a router just so you guys don't get confused. But so we have fast Ethernet 1, which is plugged into right now my residential wireless router, which I sort of use as a access server. So let's take a look at fast Ethernet 01. So we're going to show the running config. Okay, so it looks like I have an IP address on there. What I'm going to do is put an interface statement on here that says IP OSPF1, and I'm going to specify area 0. Let's take a look at my changes. Okay, so now right below my IP address there, you can see I have IP OSPF1 area 0. Now this is going to function a lot like your network statement. Okay, so now I've hopped into the second switch, which we're calling 3550 bottom. So let's go ahead and set up OSPF on this switch. Okay, again, IP routing not enabled. IP routing, enter. Router OSPF1. Router ID 192.168.0. Okay, so the other one I think we did 25. Okay, on this one let's do 52. Enter. Okay. Control Z, it's going to put me back into enable mode. show interface description. On this one, the only one being used here is gig 1. So you notice that last switch was using fast Ethernet ports. This one has gig ports. So now that we're set up, what I'm going to do is connect an interface on 3550 top to an interface on 3550 bottom, and we're going to configure those interfaces, and we're going to form a neighbor adjacency. So let's take a look. Why don't we use gig 10? So let me plug something into gig 10 real quick. Oh, okay. Show interface description. Alright, so now you can see I went ahead and plugged something into 10. So let's go ahead and start our configurations here. So conf t interface gig 10, no switch port. First thing we need here is an IP address. IP add, we're going to hit tab so it auto completes for us. Okay, IP address. Now, in order to form an OSPF adjacency, we're going to need to use two addresses that are in the same network. Okay, and what we're going to use is actually a /30, which is only going to have two usable IP addresses. We're going to use one for this switch, one for the other switch. So let's start out. Let's use that same network we're using for our router IDs. Let's use 192.168.0. Okay, and let's use the first available network here, so that's going to be 1. We're going to put make it a /30, so we're going to put the subnet mask for a /30, which ends in .252. Okay, now what was that other thing we were doing? Do you remember we were adding the network statement, but we were doing it on the interface? Okay, so let's try that. We're using area 0. Enter. Okay. So that's basically all we need to configure on this side. So let's hop back over to the 3550 top. Okay, that one I have right here. Okay, so you can see the cord that I had plugged into gig 10. On this side it goes into fast Ethernet 19. So interface FAO 19, no switch port, IP add tab, IP address 192.168.0. Now on the other one we use .1 and it's a /30. So the only other usable IP address is going to be .2. We're going to have to put our subnet mask on there. Enter. Okay. IP OSPF 1 area 0. Okay. So what we should see now, if we do show IP OSPF neighbor, bam. There we go. We have an adjacency. Fast Ethernet 19. Looks like it is full. So you can see the neighbor ID .52. So remember we gave that other switch .52 as its router ID. If we were to go over to the other one and we ran this, we should see .25 because that is the router ID on this one, and then we should see gig 10. So let's hop over to the other one. Okay, here we are. Control Z, that'll get us back to where we can run show commands here. Show IP OSPF neighbor. Enter. Bam. There we go. Where state is full. Coming off of gig 10. And this is who we're connected to. We're connected to .25. Alright. So that's how you get a neighbor adjacency built. Now, if you want to go a little bit deeper here, we can actually break our neighbor relationship, and then I'll show you how we can fix it. So on 3550 bottom here, let's take a look at the running config. Show run. Okay, we're going to go down. Bam, here we are. Okay, router ID, log adjacency changes. I'm actually going to add a command in here that says, okay, router OSPF 1, we're going to say no passive interface. Okay, that didn't work. So actually, I'm sorry, I got ahead of myself. What we're going to add is passive interface default. Good. Okay, so what this says is do not send out hellos on any interfaces unless you put in a command that says no passive interface, then gig 10, gig 11, whichever one you're attempting to no passive. So now that I've entered passive interface default, so let's try our show IP OSPF neighbor. Man, we don't have any neighbors anymore. Okay, and that's because we said passive interface default. So we're saying do not send out hellos on any interfaces. Okay, let's go back into router OSPF 1 and let's say, okay, I don't want to send out any hellos on any interfaces except on 10 I do want to send out hellos. Okay, and because 10 is where we have our other router plugged in, that should bring our neighborship back. So show IP OSPF neighbor. It's back. Okay, so a lot of times in a production network, that command is going to be on your router. For security, you do not want someone to be able to plug a router in and form a neighbor adjacency. So you only want to enable that on the ports that are going to your routers. Okay, you might have customers on 1 through 9, but on 10 you have another router that's running OSPF. So you no passive gig 10, great. If anyone on 1 through 9 manages to plug a Cisco router in there and try to form an adjacency with you, they're not getting anywhere. Okay, so that sums it up. I mean, I think I showed you quite a bit about OSPF. I showed you how to set up your router ID. I showed you how to set up your network statements, but on the interface level, right? So we didn't say network 192.168.0.0, and then the wildcard mask 0.0.0.255. We didn't do it that way, right? What we did is we went straight to the interface, and we said IP OSPF 1 area 0. Okay, we're going to allow this interface into the routing table for area 0 here. So, all right.